Welcome to another episode of Bring Out Your Undead. I'm Megan, and I have reanimated both Pepperina and Ehlwyn to continue our conversation on apparitions in D&D 5th edition. This episode is called Hovering Undead, just a couple of floaters.
In this episode, we'll be discussing 3 iconic undead creatures that don't leave any footprints behind.
Okay, but before we jump into it, I'm curious. A lot of descriptions of ghosts and undead have them just hovering above the ground, maybe not even having legs. Do hovering creatures kind of scare you guys?
Yes, 100%. Like here's my reasoning behind this, because like it's the unknown aspect to things, right? Like things in our lives are not supposed to hover and float, which means if I saw something hovering and floating, I would immediately be like, that is out of place. That's wrong. I don't, what is this? And it would just like fire off my fight or flight. You know what I mean? Am I inherently like scared? No, but my fight or flight would kick in. Like,
okay, yeah. I get that. Totally kind of agree with you. I would rather have floating horrors than like skittering too many legs or just
well, that's what I mean. Like spiders with their too many legs running towards you, that is fear. That is I would rather leap myself off a cliff before having to encounter one of those. That a floating, like just seeing the floating, which is again fight or flight. Like, am I gonna fight this or am I?
It's uncomfy. It's uncomfy. It's you shouldn't be here, but I wouldn't say I'm scared.
Yeah. I think for me it goes back to like the gentleman from Buffy. Like
oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now that literally just like my heart just dropped.
Right? Like those guys hovering towards you is not a good time. Not a good time at all.
I think just like the entire and I'm talking with my hands at this point.
Their whole thing is terrifying.
It is it's the silence, it's the smiles, it's the wide eyes, it's the hovering, it's the like cock of the head, it's the everything all combined that just.
But I think if they walked, it'd be just slightly less scary. Yeah, like what would their walk be like? Just like old man walk.
I feel like they would all like if they all did have to walk, like they would all definitely have canes, and they would all do like that, like they would all walk with a cane, but like in like a jazzy way.
No, it's all like we're all dancing.
Like where they like they kick out the cane and kind of like put it down, and they kind of like they'll strut.
But they're also wearing a fedora in this mental 100%. Image, by the way. Yeah.
Did we just
now they're not in Hush, they're in Once More with Feeling. Like we just
the best episode, hands down.
Oh my god.
I like how we just turned this into a Buffy.
I feel like we could go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, Adam and I did for a very long time. We had to cut ourselves off.
Anyways, before we get way too off topic, let's start talking.
There's undead in there, right?
Some floaters,
vampires.
This is gonna get cut to the end anyway.
We have vampire episodes later on, okay? So I just redid the schedule.
There's a vampiric mist in this. We're on topic.
Fair enough. Well, that's a good segue. You're gonna start us off here today, Peps. What are you gonna talk about?
I am talking about will-o-wisps. So there's actually a ton of stories and sightings of will-o-wisps in cultures all around the world. Each has a different name for them, including will-o'-the-wisps, foolish flames, friars' lanterns. My favorite is probably hinky punk. And jack-o'-lanterns are also tied to will-o'-wisps. And that's just to name a few. Like I looked at Wikipedia, and it had a whole, like literally every culture has a story about these. But they all have a fairly common theme, even though they have different names. These floating lights lead travelers to their death. Some cultures think they're fairies, some ghosts, some witches, but they all tend to agree there is something sinister about them. In the D&D lore, they are pretty similar. They are described as malevolent, wispy balls of light. They look like bouncing lanterns and can choose what color they appear as, or if they want to show their light at all. They haunt lonely places that are bound by dark fate or magics. Their goal is to lure travelers to their death by guiding them into traps like quicksand, monsters' pits, or anywhere dangerous that is near. They feed off of the fear and screams of their prey. So, how do they do this? When you see their light, you are filled with a sense of hope, a guiding light in the darkness. You feel safe and follow them. Will-o-wisps don't just lure good creatures. In fact, if they trick an evil creature, it might just become a will-o-wisp itself. That is one way to become one, but not necessarily the only way. They are the souls of evil beings that died in anguish in a forsaken land with powerful magic. They then become trapped, losing all hope and memory, with only the urge to feed off of others' misery. They can speak, but rarely do. If you were to hear one, it would sound like a distant whisper. Since they stick to such horrible domains, they often team up with their equally sadistic neighbors, like hags, onis, black dragons, and evil cultists, have all been known to team up with the will-o-wisps. I think this description from the book, which they're in the monster manual, really paints the best description on just how evil these creatures are. It says, as their evil allies surround and slaughter creatures, the wisps hover above them, drinking the agony of a last breath and savoring the sensation as the light of life goes out of a creature's eyes. Now, these being undead, they do have undead nature and don't need air, drink, or sleep. But if you notice, it does not include food in that because it must feed off of its victim's pain. Looking at their stats, they are tiny undead and chaotic evil. They are a CR of 2 and have an AC of 19, but only 22 hit points. They get a 50-foot hover speed, which explains their +9 to dexterity. Strength, however, gets a -5. Everything else is between a 0 and a +2, so pretty average. They have the whole undead gambit of resistances and immunities, and that combined with their 19 AC, they are going to be very difficult to actually hit. They have dark vision of 120 feet and know any languages they knew in life. They get some pretty cool abilities, first being Consume Life. As a bonus action, they can target a creature with 0 HP that is still alive. The target must make a con save or it dies, which at a CR2 to just straight out kill something is a pretty hefty ability there.
Yeah.
If it dies, the wisp regains 3d6 HP. Next is Ephemeral, and I hope that I said that right. They can't wear or carry anything. Then we get incorporeal movement, being able to pass through objects and creatures as difficult terrain, taking a 1d10 force damage if they end their turn there. And last is variable illumination. They shed bright light in a 5 to 20-foot radius and dim light for an additional amount of feet equal to the chosen radius. They can alter that with a bonus action. For actions, they get Shock, which is a +4 to hit and does 2d8 lightning damage. They also have Invisibility. The wisp and its light become magically invisible until it attacks or uses its life drain or loses concentration. So normally I'd be done talking after all of that, but there's one more twist to will-o-wisps, and it comes from the Wild Beyond the Witchlight book. In this world, there are something called an O-well, which I love that name. Oh well.
It's the will-o-will.
Oh well. There is a lot of lore behind them involving the setting that I won't get too in depth with. Basically, there are these wells scattered around hither that are so old their builders and purpose have been forgotten. They once were a gathering place for fae, but became corrupted by magic. The water became vile and transformed hither into a flooded swamp. Each well is inhabited by 1d4 will-o-wisps that float up to greet new arrivals. These wisps are chaotic good instead of evil. Love a chaotic good undead, you know? They are the creatures that drown when the land became flooded. So instead of being those evil, malevolent spirits that died horrible deaths, these are just whatever creatures happen to be around when it flooded. They can't move very far from their wells, but they do wish to find allies to help avenge their deaths. They have the same stat block from the monster manual with one addition. They get magic boon. They grant a boon to one creature that isn't undead. That creature gains a d4 and can roll it at any time within the next 24 hours and add it to one ability check, attack roll, or saving throw. And no creature can have more than one of those boons at a time.
Well, that's pretty fun.
A
Yeah.
little bit of a blessing.
A little twisty twist on the will-o-wisp.
Yeah. Just
Neat.
a little fun, chaotic good guy.
A little light and a little despair, you know what I mean? Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, let's raise
Yeah.
some dice. Let's add some questions. 14.
3.
16.
Nice. All right. So as always, we'll start with a little bit of a role-playing aspect. So any
All
cool
right.
plot hooks or role-playing tips you got, Peps?
I mean, I think if you're going to see that, like they said, they don't speak a lot. And if you hear them, they're going to be a whisper. And I think that could be a good way also to lure your party in. Like they just hear a distant, like, cry for help or come this way, you
Mm.
know, sort of like it would like go with their hope thing almost you could do where it's like this way over here,
Yeah.
safety here, you know, like it would be those sort of things to help lure you
Yeah.
into danger.
Yeah. And like all I can think of is like the will-o-wisps from Brave.
Brave.
Like,
That's
yeah.
exactly what I was thinking as well.
And like they're not necessarily evil in that
No.
one, but if you think about it, they kind of are because they did lead her into like utter danger.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of just like I think they like in your mind when you're watching them, you're like, oh, the will-o-wisps are guiding her towards her destiny, and it's like, yeah, to murder her.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Your
like
destiny is a horrible death. Yeah.
yeah, it's a horrible, horrible death.
Yeah.
But it'll make somebody else you'll fridge character and make somebody else's life better. So congratulations. But no, I think that like a nice little storyline for this one would be you don't necessarily see that there's will-o-wisps around, but then one of your party members dies, and then all of a sudden one appears above it, and then your party member turns into a will-o-wisp. And then your next, like the whole it might even be like the beloved NPC, and then your goal is to find out like maybe in the area there's a witch that controls or like a hag that knows is in control of all these wisps, and you go and you have to find her to see if you can reverse like the curse or the death that's on this character or what have you. It would be a really cool plot hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why my brain was like, these sound like Navi from Zelda.
Yeah.
Just
Annoying sounding.
yeah, like that's what came to. Hey, listen. Hey. Not so much like a whisper, but just more of like a fly that you want to swat around.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the whole idea of like the Willow Wells. Just as kind of maybe, so I always kind of like having wells as like kind of entrances to dungeons. And so it could be that they're also hovering around that well. And that's kind of like the side quest here, little signal of like, maybe go check out this well.
Yeah. We have a
They're
quest
just
for
lined
you.
up,
We have a
pointed
quest
at
for
an
you.
arrow.
Yeah, it's just got like a glowing ring around it, and you're like, oh, just a very conveniently placed sunbeam that just breaks through the treetop canopy. Yeah, so I think that would be like a really good way just to kind of lead them, just so that your kind of characters know, or your table knows that they're on the right track.
Yeah.
Could be a cool little side dungeon crawl. Also a good one if you have a player that's not able to make it to the table and you don't want to do anything that progresses majorly into the entire arc, and you just kind of want to do like a small episode and just throw in a little dungeon crawl and throw these guys in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could also tie into like if you have like a Fae type character, you can tie it into their
Yeah.
backstory in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form, right? They're just a kind of like little, like to your point, Peps, they exist in all like cultures and things like that. You could definitely customize them to how they fit in the world, right?
Yeah.
Which is really
You could
nice.
put them really anywhere.
Yeah.
I do also like that they like team up with other. I mean, you know, I love that they team up with black dragons.
Of
And then
course.
that's in there. Like, I would love to just see a bunch of these like floating around a black dragon's lair. Yeah, just like laughing as the dragon does its like sadistic torture, and
it's giving like fireflies over their swamp. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, yeah.
And I think the fact that they're able to kind of change the color that they are as well, because like in Brave, they're like that really pretty like bluishy color, but the fact that they could be orange little fireflies or like really weird like greens and things like that, I think that you could really kind of play on that as well.
For sure. And like that leads right into like talking about the exploration piece. So Peps, you're first, but any like environmental interactions or perhaps just like how they look and how they feel, like what's your vibe for exploration?
So like, you know, a lot of these we get really good like body horror, like these are just little floating lights, so we don't really get that like whole gross body horror sort of decay thing that we normally talk about in these episodes. But I do think the like horror and dread of them being so evil and malevolent, like even though at first you feel that like hope, but like as you're falling into this trap or going down the quicksand, I also love that quicksand is involved because, you know, we all thought that would be a bigger problem than it is.
It really was supposed to be a bigger problem.
It really was.
Very
but it is
so.
with these guys. They will lead you to the quicksand.
Amazing.
But it would be that horror and dread that your character would feel as they're getting sucked into this, as this little glowing light that may have been like blue or yellow or something pretty turns red and evil and like, you know, expands its light further and is just waiting for you to die. And you can hear this faint like laughter surrounding you as more of them show up.
Then it turns into a swarm.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, I know it kind of plays into both exploration and role playing, but to Ehlwyn's point, playing on the fact that they can change colors, I like the idea of the color representing mood of the area, right? So for that exploration piece, if you're like in a haunted forest, you have these glowing lights that are yellow, and then all of a sudden they turn red because something sinister is coming near. Or you see them slowly change, like if there's a line of them, they go from yellow to orange to red to guide you, like, and so it feels like it's guiding you towards danger. Right? Because I think the whole aspect of these is that someone in your party is going to following them, right?
Yeah.
So I think adding in that sense of like environmental danger where they're changing colors or moving more erratically, like going quicker or zipping around as opposed to like being nice, calm and aloof kind of thing. Or like especially if they're around, because it knows it, I feel like it wants to be able to turn evil character creatures into other will-o-wisps. So it would be drawn to the evil character in your party or the one who's closest to being evil. So if they're gonna follow someone around or like glue themselves to someone, that would be an exploration piece. You wake up in the night and something like that while you're at camp, and whoever's on watch notices that the rogue is covered in will-o-wisps. It's because they're just like hovering, waiting. You know what I mean? It's like that would be a really cool kickoff to like figuring out the backstories of your characters, like that kind of thing. But
that one secretly evil character that we all have in a party.
Yeah, exactly. All of us, you know what I
was
mean?
Gonna say, I'm usually the whole party. Murder hobos.
Yeah.
Chaotic doesn't not mean evil.
Right? True. Yes.
What about you, Ellen? Anything to add for exploration?
No, I just kind of like the idea of them being mythical mood rings.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all I picture now. No, like I had said, like I really like the idea of the fact that they can change the color. And I always kind of, as you were kind of saying, like I feel like they would also try and blend in with their environment a little bit as well. Initially. So like they're gonna try, you're gonna see more like yellows and oranges in like more like deserts and like arid type areas, and more of like the greens and kind of cooler tones in the forests, and just really kind of more environmentally camouflaged until they don't want to be.
Yeah.
So hiding in torch lights and hiding in fires and hiding in sunbeams or moonbeams and things like that as well. I
just had an idea of how everyone always throws up dancing lights.
Yeah, I was also thinking that as well, of like a sorcerer that's like just learned dancing lights and they're like practicing.
And there's an extra one.
And there's yes. Yeah. I was also thinking that as well. as a way that you could throw it in, or that this will-o-wisp sees the dancing lights and thinks that it's more will-o-wisps and like is drawn towards it. So it's just that, you know, that sorcerer or, you know, whomever is just throwing up dancing lights just to play around and starts attracting these guys.
As a DM is like, okay, so yeah, you're practicing your dancing lights, cool. Like you see one of your dancing lights start moving away from the rest of them.
Yeah, and you can't control it.
Yeah, you've lost control of one of your lights, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna go follow and go find out where it's going. It's a murder.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Speaking of murder, combat.
All right. They're not going to fight you immediately because their whole thing is to lure you into danger. So they're not going to just like roll up and start hitting. They're going to try to get you away. But if you start hitting them, that bonus action of being able to just kill you if you're at 0 hit points, like you fall down a pit trap and you're stuck down there and you took fall damage, you're already at level 2, you're not going to have a whole bunch of hit points to start with. So, like, you fall on a spike, you're pretty close to death anyways. They just have to pop off one, shock attack and then hit that bonus action, and you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, that's brutal right there. And that's how I think they would do it. If you don't die on that initial fall, it'll be a real quick out.
Yeah. No, I agree that they aren't going to fight you. In fact, they're probably going to be like in the wings of you fighting something else. And if someone goes down, it's going to like invisibility its way through and then do it. But I feel like as a DM, you do have to add that exploration piece of maybe you saw them the night before, so you know they exist in the forest, so it's not a surprise when they turn up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would add that to like exploration and combat, that I wouldn't have them in battle, but you know that this forest has will-o-wisps in it. So if your party member dies, one might mysteriously appear, and it's not a surprise to your party that it's there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was literally thinking the exact same of, you're fighting that swamp hag and you go down and her wisps just come and you're mine now.
No.
Pretty much.
I am surprised they don't have like a charm person or something like that.
I feel like they should, because like
that should be how they're luring you.
I feel like that's I would increase the CR if I was to do that though.
Yeah.
Because then that adds their ability to mind control and or emotion control. But I do like the idea of beefing them up and giving them like calm emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe even hold person so that it can like float over to you. Like
like their lore is so much of them like luring you and calming you when you first see them and having that safety. Like there's nothing mechanically that really ties into that.
Other than being pretty lights and shiny things.
Things like that. Yeah, no, they would definitely have a lot of, or they definitely could have a lot of those if you wanted to beef them up, or they get greater in numbers. So if you have like several of them together, then they kind of start influencing kind of moods and shifts around you and things like that as well. You could always do that as well.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, that's will-o-wisps. I believe Ehlwyn, you have the next topic of today.
Yeah. So the next one is Vampiric Mists. So out of Mordekainen presents the monsters of the multiverse. So Vampiric Mists are pretty much just vampires that had been destroyed in their corporeal form and weren't able to head back to their nest or wherever for that rest that they need if they've been destroyed. So there's always kind of like that in between moment of them being a vampire and then them having to go rest and get their body back after you kill them. They turn into that mist form, and if that mist form isn't able to get back to where they need to rest, they turn into Vampiric Mist, which is adequately named. So they like to hang out in areas that are swampy, that are kind of like misty forests and things like that, places that they're able to conceal themselves. They don't really kind of venture out where they can really be noticed. They're more kind of ambush killers. So Vampiric Mists, the picture in the Mordekainen's, it looks like a really angry cumulus cloud. Like it's just like a thunder cloud, but it's got like these red veins that are through it. And yeah, it's a little bit unsettling. There's not a lot of lore on these guys other than the fact that they were previously vampires. They have a action that is called life drain. So that's primarily how they do end up kind of killing or attacking their victims. So when you're in kind of the same space as Vampiric Mist, you need to make a Constitution DC 13 saving throw, or you take 2d6 plus 3 necrotic damage. So they life drain you through that, but then the mist also regains 10 hit points when they do that. So as they're draining you, they're gaining their life back. And then the target's maximum hit points is also reduced the amount of the necrotic damage that they ended up taking. So they're slowly reducing your levels down. And then once you hit 0 hit points, you die straight up.
Insta death. Yeah.
Insta death. Yeah. Insta death. So these guys are a AC of 13. They've got a fly speed of 30. They got 30 hit points, so they're pretty squishy. But I think with the fact that with every life drain they do, they regain 10 hit points. It's just going to be a continuous regeneration of trying to get these things to die. So you got to hit them quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what, a third of their hit points they regain it.
Yeah, every time they attack you, exactly. Yeah. So pretty annoying. They've got the usual damage resistances and cold immunities that we've been seeing through the undead. They've got passive perception of 11. They speak no languages or anything along those lines. They are a challenge rating of 3, so they are a little bit on the lighter side. They have forbiddance, so a mist can't enter a residence without an invitation, so very similar to vampires. They also have life sense, which they can sense any creature within 60 feet of it unless it's a construct or an undead. And then they also have misty form, so they can occupy another creature's space and vice versa. And they can also essentially anywhere air can go, they can go. So if air can pass through something, they can also pass through it as well. And then they also have sunlight hypersensitivity. So they take 10 radiant damage at the start of its turn when it's in direct sunlight or in sunlight. And it also has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks when it's in sunlight as well. Yeah, so that's Vampiric Mist.
That's the Vampiric Puff.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
Little poof.
Little poof of vampire.
Little poof.
All right, everybody, let's raise some dice and talk about these little clouds of life. 9.
Or
8.
Amazing. I will go first today then for this one. All right, so we're talking about first, of course, role-playing aspects to these. These ones are probably going to be a little bit more difficult to role play in the sense that they don't talk, they just float around like yep. You know what I mean? So some tips and tricks for this one would definitely be kind of like, if you know what kind of vampire it was in its waking life and you have a little bit of an idea of what that backstory is, definitely connect it to the types of creatures it would go after, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So like, let's say in its lifetime it had a vendetta against elves, or a vendetta against a very specific species. Maybe if you have one of those in your party, it's going to go for that person first, right? Or just like little things like that, so you can kind of like figure out the pecking order of what this thing is going to do. Because obviously you're not really going to interact with it in the regards of having a conversation, but you can definitely play with that on the battlefield of where its priorities sit, right? So, bam. What about you, Peps? More was it, Ehlwyn, you're next.
Yeah, with these ones, it's one of those that like I feel like if you've had a party where you've already introduced a vampire to it and they've already kind of vanquished the vampire, but they didn't quite get to deal with it before it got back to its resting place, or they like actually blocked it from getting to its resting place, but didn't quite know what they were doing. you could always have this vampiric mist circle back and be that vampire that they had killed. So it's just kind of like a
floating soul. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's something that they've met before. And maybe like it doesn't talk and it doesn't do things like that, but you know when you're around things then you're like this feels familiar. Like if you have a character that has a really high just like passive perception, you can just say to them like something feels familiar around here. Like you feel like you know this, you feel like you've seen something. They haven't met the vampiric mist yet, and it's just like one of those like deja vu moments that your characters have, and you can kind of throw that at them, and then they're just kind of like, what do you mean? Like, we already dealt with this vampire, like why is it here again? But they don't see it. And then you can surprise encounter in that way.
What about you, Pips?
I find it really interesting that they have forbiddance, because who's inviting a cloud into their home?
Right. I also read that and giggled.
Yeah.
Like are they just knocking on the door and then you open the door and they're like, oh, come right in, mysterious cloud.
Yeah.
With creepy red veins going through you.
Yeah.
Into my home.
Pulsating
Like
cloud. Yeah.
Right. So like I kind of want to think about like how they would get invited into a residence that would make sense.
I think that could be a clue to like what vampire it's connected to.
Yeah.
Like if it suddenly is in your home and you're like, this is like then someone does the mental research of like, this is a vampire, the mist of a vampire. It's like, well, what vampire did we let in our home? And it's like probably only one that you know of in your life. And you're like, oh crap.
One would hope.
Yeah.
I'm inviting any vampire that shows up to my doorstep in.
Especially if they look like
100%.
Spike.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It'd be a hard mental search for me.
Oh, it would. Yeah, it would be. There's those memes that's like, you're not gonna do that, are you? And it's just like the guy that's holding open the door, and he's just like, welcome in. Absolutely.
So good.
100%.
Hollywood has marketed vampires towards women as being positive things. I'm sorry.
This is a good thing
I
for
just
us.
had to talk about this at work today. My coworker's reading Dracula.
Nice.
We were talking about how hot vampires are. He was like, after reading this, I get it. But yeah, I mean, even if it was like a vampire that had been following you and, charming you and that kind of thing, like having that familiarity, like you were talking about, Ehlwyn, like this mist seems familiar and you almost want to let it in just because you have that draw to it, because you've been under its spell and it might not quite be gone yet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's really the only way.
Yeah.
Anybody's letting a mysterious mist into their house.
Yeah. To bleed right into the exploration pillar, like for me to start like talking about how like you have a sense of familiarity with this mist because you've encountered it before. So there's one thing that I've noticed that I've had a couple DMs use, and that is the scent of a person. So like you meet this tall, dark, handsome man, and he smells like sandalwood and cinnamon, right? Or like Terry did play a character in our campaign once that he had coffee breath, right? And anytime my character thought of him, I would think of coffee breath. And like, so it was like those scents that you would smell. So I think that if you're trying to explore like the possibility of like knowing what vampire this was connected to, you almost have to have a callback to your encounter with this original vampire and what they smelled like. I think would be a really fun connection to make. So suddenly it's just like, yeah, you're encountered by this vampire mist, and you're suddenly like overwhelmed with the scent of sandalwood and cinnamon. Yeah. And you're like, fuck that guy, like immediately, you know what I mean? Like, so I thought that would be a really cool exploration piece. But what about you?
So when I read that they had forbiddance as well, and when you were talking about it, Peps, I was thinking kind of the opposite of what you were saying, is as like an environmental, you're staying at an inn or you're at your own keep, or wherever you are, and I guess it would be at your keep. And and the fog rolls in, but the fog doesn't roll past the front door. It just kind of accumulates at the base of it, at the threshold.
Mm.
And you're just like, that's weird.
That's some vampire behavior right
That's
there.
not normal. Why is the fog not like coming in? Why is it just obviously stopping? And so I think that that's like a really good, it's like a, but only if somebody rolls a high enough perception just to notice it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So that was where my brain went when I was thinking of that, is like, it's stopped at the door.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. What about you, Peps?
So with that forbidden, it specifically says like residence, like so meaning home. So like public spaces, I would imagine it could still come into.
Mm-hmm.
And with it being able to go anywhere air goes.
Yeah.
Like being in a tavern or, you know, something like that, or wherever, and just having this mist come through underneath the door or through a crack in the window or, you know, down the chimney, and just coming out into the room, I think would be like a good sort of dread and horror. Like, again, it doesn't have body horror, right? Like, you can't describe it as like the rotting and decay of the undead and the smell and you know, like all of that kind of stuff. But you can have that creepy, this cloud, this mist is following you. Like you see it outside and you go into this tavern and then all of a sudden it comes down the chimney. So I would do like that just creepy factor of this mist following you. And you notice it for like days before you really before you encounter it, before you combat it, like it's just following you around anywhere you go.
So I have kind of an on-topic, off-topic question for you guys, because something you said, Peps, kind of triggered something, because I know how I would probably react to it. So you brought up a really good point about, you know, it's your residence and things like that. But, you know, as adventurers, you know, your table tends to sometimes stick in the same kind of town and in the same area for longer periods of time, especially if it's, you know, a pretty significant point in their plot hook or in their plot, and usually tend to take up residence in hotels, you know, like the rooms for board that are above taverns and things like that. So how would you kind of categorize rooms for rent as far as like residences versus, you know, especially if it's like long term, like you're Airbnb-ing it in this tavern for like a few months.
I see where you're going with this, and we legitimately just dealt with this in Adam's campaign. And the whole concept behind it is home. So wherever your character considers that to be home. So we came into a town where they had a bunch of tents around. They put up a tent for us. And they basically said, put your stuff in your tent like it is your home.
Like it's your home.
So we had to put our bedrolls out and put things in, like put our personal knickknacks around and like make it our home. So that was a safe space for us to go to. But we couldn't go to anybody else's tent because it was not decored or made out to be like our
your home.
So that's how I would correct that, in the sense where if you're putting up residency somewhere and you know that there's vampires in the area, you put out your personal effects to make your residency or your hotel room your home.
Right. Would you still allow them in the public spaces of that tavern?
I would.
Like the downstairs like tavern and things like that.
Door.
The stairwell. They can't go up the stairwell or something.
Well, I would say that they could probably go up the stairwell and they could go into the hallways. But that could also be kind of like this mist is carrying up and it's just stopping at the doorways of all of the rooms for board upstairs type thing.
That's fair.
Well, that brings you into like welcome mats. Does that count as like letting them into your home? Is there just a town that nobody has a welcome mat?
I mean,
because this thing is like haunting them.
I mean, so we could really go into a deep dive of ridiculous stories that I've read from real life where people have broken into houses and they have had lawyers or argue for them. The mat said welcome. It said that I could come in, and they got off on minor charges.
That's dumb. I don't like that. I don't agree with it.
So I mean, like it is a thing.
I follow, you know, like like a TikToker that is
Yeah.
like a folklorist, right?
Yeah.
And like talks about fae and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And it's like, do not have a welcome mat.
Don't have a welcome
That
mat.
invites them in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Semantics.
my welcome mat says if you can read this, roll for initiative. So
Yep, that's fair.
so I mean, like,
Get ready to be fought.
I feel like if you want to go there, sure.
Yeah. Oh Lord. All right. Well, to wrap up these folks talking about combat, I don't think there's too much more to add other than the fact that like life drain is like their only main like ability to like, and that's what they're gonna do, right?
Yeah.
If they get a hold of you, they're gonna
They're
continue
so
to drain the life out of you until you're gone. Like that's that's what they want to do, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But again, as a DM, I would probably flavor that with like they're following you for a reason. Like it's not just because, you know, like you fought it, you killed its kin, you did something to it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I think it might take your characters a little bit of time because it's, you know, resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from like non-magical, you know, items like most undead. It could take them a hot minute to figure out like, oh, this sword's not working. Why is the sword running through the air not working? For them to clue in that they might need, you know, more magical means to be able to deal with this. And so it's going to be a lot of dodging and evasion. But you know, it's got a hover speed of 30, so it's going to be keeping up with you. So I think it's just a matter of figuring it out.
True.
See, like for me, vampires are very methodical. You know, they have a reason for everything that they do. So it would be trying to figure out why would they attack? Like what reason do they have? Like as this mist, like what is it that draws them to attack your party?
They're like sharks in the water. They just want blood.
Yeah.
So they're you know, like unlike the will-o-wisps that don't provoke, like these guys would go after you because they're just bloodthirsty. Like that's all they want is blood.
Yeah.
That's their main drive is blood. And so they're just going to go after in one of the kind of like the wiki lores or wiki pages for 5e, it was talking about how like it would go after if you had if there was a party member that had like a nick, like a little scratch, if you had like a really clumsy you know, party member that falls down and always has scraped knees and things like that, it smells its blood and it would go after it first. It's like a shark in the water type thing.
Yeah. So if you didn't have like a methodical backstory as to why they're coming after you, like you just have a character who's constantly injured.
Yeah.
Be like just got out of a battle with something else.
Got out of
like
the battle
before your long rest when that magically heals and you're fine.
Smells you. Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the Vampiric Mist. So I'm gonna take us home with the Flameskull. So these are visually a skull covered in flame.
Now yours already just sounds cooler than ours.
Pause for laughter. Yeah.
Pause for Zelda.
They honestly, if
skull.
what you picture when you think Legend of Zelda with the green flame, that's exactly what they look like. So, but to get down to it, these are born from the remains of a powerful dead wizard that can only be created by another dark sinister means and some kind of ritualist magic done by other powerful dark spellcasters. So once a specific ritual is done, this dead wizard's skull erupts with green flame and becomes a neutral undead tiny creature. They become eternally bound to the spellcaster who created them and are usually used to protect treasures or mayhaps a phylactery, perhaps, or other just such sacred grounds too, or like basically they're given a role by their creator and that's what they have to upkeep. So that's the thing to keep in mind is that they follow the instructions to the letter. So spellcasters actually have to be careful about how they provide their instructions because they will follow them like a lawful stupid character. So that's something to keep in mind. It does have a slight understanding of its old life, as in it does sometimes speak its old voice or its old language that it knew when in its previous life. And it does say that they know spells from its old life, and it doesn't have to use their somatic or material components to do so. So of course in the stat block it has a spell list, but again, I think that you can customize that because in the lore it is written that it knows spells from its known life. So just keep that in mind as DMs. So Coming back to the fact that it is a flaming skull, the fire that surrounds it does burn forever, and it can be used to damage folks or be used as well as a source of light that can actually maintain and control. So it can dim or brighten its light. They do have rejuvenating abilities, so the only way to kill them is to use holy water once it's dead, dispel magic, or remove curse. It's the only way to kill it. Also, a cool thing to note is that when they do fulfill their duties or can no longer fulfill their duties, they become completely autonomous. So once they're done and they realize, oh, what I was brought here to do is done, cool, I'm gonna go off and be a Flameskull somewhere else. Have a nice day. Like, it's not that it continues to be devoted to this thing. So, like, let's say the creator dies, and now it's like, okay, well, I can't really fulfill my duties towards it because it's a dead creature. It will fly and move on its way, right? Stat-wise, or some fun things to note, is that they are a CR4, so they have an AC of 13 and a fly speed of 40. So, again, fitting into this hovering theme for today. Of course, because they are the remnants of wizards, they are skilled in Arcana and Perception and have boosted stats in Con, Intelligence, and Dex. Everything else is 0 or below. So nothing very exciting. And they have all the classic boons of being an undead, of course. But to make my earlier descriptions make sense, here's a couple of explanations of their abilities. So they actually have an ability called Illuminate, which is their control over the dimming and brightening of their flame. They have magical resistance, of course, because they're magical creatures. And, of course, the rejuvenation ability. The extra thing to add to this is that they rejuvenate within the hour.
Oof.
So if you kill it and don't holy water it and don't use a magical spell to remove its curse, it will come back in an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, what's up? So you kill this thing, skull falls to the ground, stupid character picks up skull, puts in bag. Well, dear.
Yeah.
You have a flaming skull erupting from your backpack an hour later.
Who hasn't just picked up a skull and put it in their bag, you know?
All the time.
Roman says this is why I'm cursed. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but I digress. So as I mentioned, they do come with a simple spell list, but as I said before, I feel like you can customize it. But they are a level 5 intelligence spellcaster, and they have spells like Mage Hand, Magic Missile, and then Flaming Sphere and Fireball. Classic wizard spells, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Fireball spells do kind of make sense because it is said that their eyes are made of flame as well. And in fact, that plays into its attacks. So to explain its attacks, it does have a multi-attack of what's called Flame Ray, which they can use twice. And what Flame Ray is, it is a ranged spell attack with a +5 to hit, and it will hit for 3d6 fire damage. These are flames that are just basically thrown from their eyes. Flamethrower!
Love it,
But-
love it.
But that's it. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's just a flaming green skull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So,
I feel like I painted one of those, but it was a dice.
oh, that'd be neat. That'd be cute.
Did I?
I
I
like that
got a
about
whole
you.
set of minis that are dice, but monsters.
That's fair.
From
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Right.
as a dice goblin, need that set.
Whatever you just said, I am into it. All right, for the last time today, ladies, let's raise some dice and talk about the Flaming Skull.
2.
Oh my
I
god!
started
rolled
real
like crap.
high,
That
and
was
then
a
just
that
garbage.
was a critical miss for me. That was a 1.
Oh
No.
man!
Well, I got a
Rolling
14,
like
so
crap today.
I will go first
I
again.
know I'm not going last with a 2.
Yeah, I know. How did that happen?
Oh Lord. Okay, so as always, starting with role playing, so anywhere from like a plot hook to role playing tips for you. As mentioned, these do speak with the voice of who they were previously. So I can imagine that I would love a cute little plot hook of you if you have a wizard in your group and you come across a flaming skull while traversing through some kind of a dungeon, and it's a famous wizard that your wizard in your party is obsessed with, right? And now wants to like talk to and learn from and learn their spells, but they're not inherently like, if they're there for a purpose and you're in their space, it's going to be hard to convince it to assist you or help you.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be like, well, I kind of have to do this thing for this other wizard. So if you go and do that thing for me and that's done, I can be autonomous and come and join you.
Yeah.
Right. And which I think would be a really fun little backstory to have, because then if you do that, your wizard will have a little flaming skull that just follows it around.
Yeah.
It
That would be really cute.
would be
Yeah.
so cute.
They
But
just
what
get
are-
a little familiar. I love that they're tiny. It's
They're
a
tiny,
and
because it's a skull, right?
it's a head, yeah.
It's the size of your head. Like, it's not gonna
Well,
be huge.
Yeah,
Mm.
like the will-o-wisp is also tiny, and I just love that they're just tiny little floaty guys.
Yeah, just living their best life, you know?
But they also both like light up and have like they're just tiny little lights that follow you around.
Yeah. So cute.
compared to a vampire fart.
and try to kill you, you know.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. What about you, Peps? What other role-playing ideas do you have?
So I think you would have to role play them very differently based on if they finished their business or not.
Yeah.
Like if it is previous to them finishing it, it would be very obsessed with what that command is. Like that would be the only thing that it cares about, that it thinks about. There's no talking to it other than if it's trying to get to this thing, that whatever command that it's been given. And like you said, like they have to be very literal with the command that it's given, which could be like whatever that command is could be very fun to interact with the party, and like trying to figure out exactly what it is and trying to figure out a loophole to that
to
thing.
go around it.
Yeah. Or it's just gonna mow through you because you're in its way.
It's that weird, like, exactly how did he say it? Like, exactly. Like, in verbatim,
right.
can you just repeat that? Like, thanks.
What is... and then your party's, like, writing it down like it's a riddle. Like,
Yeah.
It's like if you make a pact with a fae. Like, you have to be very careful with what exactly you are saying.
Yeah. I was thinking like a devil's contract. Like you have to read that fine print and you have to like, what is it saying? Yeah.
Which would also be fun if you had a player that was like a necromancer and like raised this thing.
Yeah.
And like gave it a command and then that fucked you over because your player said it wrong.
Yeah. Fuck you. I love it.
Yeah, I like the whole idea that it's like a dog with a bone until, no pun intended, until it fulfills that. So like it's, if you get in its way, it's gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, so if you get in its way, it's gonna fuck you up. I mean, it's fire. It can shoot its fire rate twice, right? Yeah. So if it gets mad at you, it's just gonna fucking flamethrower you and fireball you until you're gone, right?
Yeah. So I think you could I would play it that, like, you know, there's a couple of warning signs, and it's a matter of whether or not the table takes those warning signs at face value, or if they're just like, oh, this is like a cute little fun boy that's just floating around in a ball of flames. How much damage can it do? Like, and they don't feel like it's a threat, especially if you don't have any like wizards or kind of anybody that is very skilled in the arcana might not know what this is, and they just kind of think that it's just a skull.
Yeah.
So I think that would,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, you know how I love fireballs, so I mean, like, I would just use.
Yeah, you never ask how big the room is. It's fine. Yeah,
fireball the shit out of it.
It doesn't like care. This is right up my alley.
It doesn't care. It'll come back in an hour. It'll
right.
Fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like fireball.
Literally does not care how big the room is.
Yeah.
No.
But I think so, like again, if you had like a little familiar for your wizard that had a flaming skull following it around and is like its teacher, I think it would be absolutely hilarious, the fact that like it can get killed easily, but then they just pick up the skull, put it in their bag, and then it comes back like an hour later. It's just you don't really care when it dies, you know what I mean?
Regens.
Yeah. But I feel like if I was a DM and I gave this to a character as a familiar, I'd be like, it can use fireball once, but it has to like it's more like an explosion. So it runs in, it goes, and then it like then the skull falls, and if you don't go retrieve the skull, then you lose your person, right? But I think that'd be a really cool thing. That way it's not overpowered, but it's kind of like a Hail Mary. But
I'd like maybe as your character or as the player levels up,
give him more things.
It like the skull can level up with him. But it almost has that like trauma bond to it, that when it regenerates after an hour, it'll bond to the being that's closest to it. So there's a possibility that like if your wizard doesn't go pick it up, or if the character doesn't go pick it up, that it originally was the familiar too, and like the barbarian picks it up and just grabs it and forgets to give it back, it's all of a sudden bonded to the barbarian.
Yeah, that's fair. That's cute. Oh Lord. All right, exploration pieces for these ones. trying to figure out how, like, if you're, I don't feel like I would ever hunt one down, but I do feel like if you're going to be going through a wizard's tower, or if you're going to be going to fight like a black dragon or an evil green dragon or something like that, maybe they do rituals to create these things as guardians of their hordes. And like they're just floating around the dungeons that you move through, right? Like if you use Legend of Zelda as an example, these things float around in dungeons, right? They just float around. So I think that would be where I would encounter them the most. And I feel like that would be a good clue to the fact that you were coming up across probably a very evil spellcaster, because these are not created lightly and not created simply, right? So it'd be a good exploration clue that you see these things floating around in a dungeon, or in a town at nighttime, you see one out just floating through the forest, like doing its like evening routine. Like but
Yeah.
Just doing its rounds.
I mean,
right.
you could even go with like the cultist route, and this one was a cultist that sacrificed itself to become one of these.
Yeah.
To live forever.
Yeah.
To guard
So,
that
like,
one specific thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
But I like thinking about how they cast their spells, because I have a lot of DMs that when you cast a spell, they ask like, and what does that look like for your character?
And especially with
And-
these, because they don't need components or the somatic component.
It's just a floating head. So
verbal.
what do their spells look like? Where do they come from? Do they just appear in front of them? Do they come out of them? I like that they have mage hand, and like they don't need somatic, but they just from their memory and their life have their mage hand do the thing that they used to do. And that's what casts it, or that's where it comes from. So yeah, I would get creative with, like, it's not just they cast fireball, but like this ball of fire like comes from somewhere before it casts across the room, like trying to figure that out exactly where this magic originates from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think you could just really play up like how they look, like the body horror of them, because if you've never experienced one before, or if you have, you know, some of the lower level a lower level table, I'm sorry, they're just coming across a flaming floating head. What
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, the ones in Zelda always used to freak me out as a kid. There was just something that was icky about them. But I kind of like even though in the book they are you know, depicted as like the green flame with the red glowing flame eyes and things like that, almost similar to like the will-o-wisps, you could have them like blue flame, red flame, you know, kind of mood based or elemental based, or even just you know, type of magic, necrotic versus you know, lightning versus, you know,
I would also
versus, you know, that sort of thing. So like you can definitely kind of skin it to fit the area that you need it to fit, or to kind of fit, you know, if it was you know, previously, you know, I always have characters, or I've seen characters that lean more towards like lightning spells and things like that, instead of a kind of a diversity. So if they tend to lean more towards lightning, have them more on the blue flame, and you know, that's the damage. You can kind of play up with that, play around with that a little bit more.
Yeah, their attack would be like a lightning ray instead of a fire ray, and then you would give them lightning spells instead of fireball. You'd get them like thunderclap or something like that.
No,
for sure.
Yeah, like thunder wave, and
that'd be cool.
Or like ice, like, you know, like sleet storm. Yeah,
that'd be cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that bleeds right into combat in terms of
right
just like how would you fight with them? Like they do really only have the one attack, which is the ray from its eyes.
Yeah.
I like the fact that like the idea of customizing that to like what element that wizard was more accustomed to. I feel like they went with the fireball and like the fire direction because wizards are famously known for fireball. But I do like the fact that like if you wanted to flavor it, I think as DMs we could do that. I also like the idea that, again, like if it was if they were built to protect a certain dragon type, or like a very specific type of wizard raised them, they would either be immune to that wizard's magic or be bolstered by it or something like that. You can make some role-playing connectivity with that. But I do feel like when it comes to fighting these things, I would want to think about what that looked like when it died, like when its flame goes out. And I like the visual of the skull hitting the ground and then the flame like going out, kind of like it's like almost like a propane like spill of fire on the ground, and then it just dissipates. And then the rejuvenation of it when it comes back is like a explosion, like as if you left the gas on too long, on like when you light your freaking like gas stove or something like that, right? Yeah. So I think that'd be a really cool visual to speak to, especially if it's a different colored flame, right? So, what about you, Peps?
Sort of like with the role playing, I think the combat tactics very much would be different on if it finished its goal or not.
Yeah.
You know, if it has not finished its goal and is it still in that one-minded, you know, like
format,
route, then it's like it's going to just like not fuck around. It's going to just attack you. Like you're not gonna have a chance to really talk your way out of it. So in that aspect, you'd walk into its room that it's protecting, fireball, like just immediately fireball, like it's fire beams out of its eyes. Like you gotta hope that you have a lot of tieflings in your party. Versus it would be a lot easier to talk to it or talk it down if it has finished that and has its own you know, mentality now, and it's not driven as much as it is. So I think it very much how you play it as a DM has to depend on that, on if they are coming across it as it's still a guardian or still following this rule, or if it has its own autonomy
in mind.
point.
And then what does the personality look like when it has its own autonomy, right? It's going to differ too, right?
And I think you could even, because it comes back, like if it finishes its thing and your party sees that and then it comes back as a completely different, you know, thing. So your party is like ready to attack. Oh my God, this thing attacked us last time. And it sees it again and they're on guard. Like, and then it's like, chill out, man.
Very much so.
We already did this.
Whoa. Calm down, man.
Amazing.
So like it gives you the chance to play around with both sides of that, really.
Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Ehlwyn? Final combat thoughts?
Oh, no, I think we kind of covered, you know, like I had said, changing up the different kind of elemental attacks and things like that, not just fireball, you know, sleet/ice storm, necrotic damage, that sort of stuff. I kind of like the idea of switching that up. But yeah, no, I definitely agree that it would have to be dependent on at what stage are you finding this thing, is it autonomous or not. I think we kind of covered it.
Perfection.
On a scale of 1 to 10 deadly whooshies, how would you rate
whooshes?
Whooshes. Oh, whooshes. Okay. We'll read that. I like read it as like whooshies. I'm like, what's whooshies?
Nah, keep going. We'll keep that in.
So on a scale of 1 to 10 deadly whooshes, how would you rate these creatures as a part of the undead landscape in D&D 5th edition? So let's start with will-o-wisps / willow-wells. So do we want to break those apart?
We'll keep them together. Yeah.
Keep them together? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like the rating system changes every time. Sorry, Adam. I think they're adorable, so I give them a 10. I just think they're so stinking cute. I would want to put them in my campaigns and I would want to use them. But when it comes to like scary undead, 0. Like I am not like, yes, they're sinister and they're dark and they have that dark like back history to them, but like I don't care. Freaking cute, you know?
Yeah, completely by themselves. I would also say they're adorable and they're like a 0 on the deadly whooshes scale.
Deadly whooshes, yeah.
They're a 10 on the adorable scale, completely by themselves. If they were more of a swarm with you know, black dragon or something like that, that's maybe a little bit, but I think that that's kind of like scary guard dog privilege that they would have with being by the dragon. So yeah,
I don't know, I think they're a little scarier than that.
Like they can kill you guys. I don't
like
understand why
doing the research, like if you read the description in the book, there are so many like evil like I cut out a lot of because it just kept driving it home on how evil these things were.
But this is it. We've been fooled.
Yeah.
They're adorable. I want to
Yeah.
follow them.
They did their trick.
But that's what they're supposed to do. They're
They
supposed
fulfilled
to
their
make you want to
purpose.
follow you, and then they lead you to quicksand, and there's nothing scarier than quicksand.
Death. Absolute death. I love it.
What about Vampiric Mist?
0. I think
Yeah.
it's especially because they follow the vampire rules that they can't come into residency. I'm like, ha, puff of dust, you can't come into my home. Like,
Yeah.
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 Like, you're not even a handsome man that I would invite in.
Right.
So-
Also, like, if they came into my door and they were a vampire and know had a vendetta against me, my response would be like, "Why are you obsessed with me? Like, get out."
Yeah. I mean, I think I would probably give them like a 2 or a 3 just on the basis of the fact that they've regained a third of their hit points with life drain.
Yeah.
And so, that would be kind of like more of an annoying thing. But again, I think that forbiddance definitely hinders them a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That is like a common theme with all 3 of these, that they either drain your life or just come back.
Yeah.
That you beyond that they're all just like floating little guys.
Puffs.
Yeah, they all
Yeah.
do have that like life drain and
Yeah.
the just like the permadeath of the
Yeah.
will-o-wisp and the vampiric mist.
Yeah.
This definitely adds, I think, to all of their
For sure.
their factor. Their
Like in real life,
devolutions.
would I want to encounter one? Yeah, probably not.
Lindsay walks outside. There's just a cloud standing outside her door. Damn it! Today's the day.
Alrighty, Flameskull.
I don't. These ones don't have an insta death, but they're just annoying to kill. So I would give them
Mhm.
like a 5 or a 6 on the annoyance scale.
I would give them like, I was thinking also like a 5 or so, just on the childhood PTSD of remembering Zelda.
Well, because they fly at you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, oh,
As a 10-year-old playing N64, that was frightening.
this sound. That also the audio in that game, if like when they're
Weren't
flying
they like
towards you, yeah,
or something like that? Yeah, like
Yeah.
they were like chittery and no.
not a fan.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you could definitely fold that into these, but I would say just on the PTS scale, PTSD,
Yeah.
PTSD scale, they're a 5.
Yeah.
See,
Fuck
I don't know.
off.
I think we made these ones cute with them being able to like be your little familiar.
Right?
I know.
Little skull familiars.
We
like, what's up?
have
But they're like
a tendency to do that.
We're
We're like, oh, here's this
why do
deadly
we
thing.
call
Let's make it
these
our familiar.
like these are the most like deadly, evil, sinister things, and we're like, they're so cute though.
because it's like it's the most evil wizard created by another evil wizard. Like it's just like, oh, how nice for you. You're so
Yeah.
cute.
Do you want to hang out with us tonight?
So precious. So precious.
We have a nice charcuterie board and maybe some ale.
We love charcutes and mimosas, you know? Like,
Maybe you could start that campfire for us. Your
Right.
laser eyes.
thanks, laser eyes. Like,
Roast some marshmallows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're not problematic. You're problematic. We can fix them.
Adam is just sitting there, just
Uh,
shaking his head at us. I can
yeah.
see it. I can see it now.
I think Kyle also edits our episodes sometimes, so I wonder if he's heard our nonsense a few times before too. Sorry, guys.
You know, I like in the one like Discord channel, they were like, I feel like I'm sitting in on ladies' night.
Yeah.
Like a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
This is what our ladies' nights are like, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like when we do hang out, like it is very much just like this.
Nonsense. Chaos and nonsense.
Yeah, you're welcome. But
Mhm.
We bring joy
Oh.
to everybody's lives.
Everybody. All right, well, now it's time to close the casket on this part of our conversation on Undead in D&D 5th edition. If you'd like to discuss what you've heard here today, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and r/It's a Mimic. For more episodes on monsters and other D&D topics, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bring Out Your Undead. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com, as well as a store and a Patreon. You can check out the show notes for more details. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
Like they didn't think they were gonna get half of a Buffy episode.
Come on. I think we're doing 3 episodes about vampires.
Yeah.
Coming up. So the last 3 episodes, we're doing the same thing we did for last year that we did for Halloween. We do 4 episodes, 1 per week during October. And it's all vampires.
Vampire lore in the real life. Recap for 27 vampires. Oh yeah, we are.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a big one. Is it still light outside? Is that a window or is that a or is that a tank? That's a tank.
Back there?
Yeah.
That's a tank.
Yeah.
It's just a light over my D&D stuff.
Okay, sorry. It looked like a tank or a window. Yeah.
No, it's
looks
just the light
like a reptile tank.
There's like a bottle of wine over there that it's like glowing.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
No, my snake tank is upstairs.
Well, that's fine.
What kind of snake do you have?
It's a ball python that is named Banana Bread.
Adorable. I don't like snakes, but I want a hognose because I think that they're the most stinking adorable things.
Yeah, pretty
it's
cute.
like I also don't like spiders, but I want a regal jumping spider because they are also the most adorable things ever.
Yeah, you just gotta watch them on TikTok.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Well, ball pythons are very chill, so like they'll just kind of cuddle with you almost and like watch TV with you, and he wraps around my wrist like a bracelet.
Yeah,
very cute.
And just sort of hangs out unless he's hungry.
Yeah. Oh my god! Have we done a Buffy episode?
Yeah, Adam and I did.
Oh, you did it. Okay, I was wondering. I was like, because none of us. I admitted this a few times. I've watched Buffy, but it wasn't my go-to. So it's not one of those ones that I know a lot about, right? Whereas I know a few folks in my life, like Ehlwyn included, have probably watched this millions of times.
Yeah. I want to say we recorded it right around Ehlwyn's wedding. So
pre me coming in.
Yeah.
So I think you're a little preoccupied to be on it with.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, no, I think I watched it all the seasons probably twice a year for a good solid 5 or 6 years.
What a nerd.
It was my go-to comfort show.
I've watched it start to finish minimum 8 times.
Oh yeah, I'm well above that.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Well above that. And that was back when we had DVDs. It wasn't even on streaming that I watched it. I was full on committed with all seasons of DVDs.
They're still in my room. I have them all in my room still under my TV.
So my dad bought all of them. I like how this is way off topic, but my dad bought all of the DVD box sets so that it was something that him and I could watch together, because he's like, you would like this show. Let's watch this one together. Because we always watch sci-fi, and I think this is his way of trying to identify with me. And you're the cutest thing. So we have the whole box set in our family, but I've never sat down and watched it from beginning to end in one round like I have with other TV series.
I got a cough coming.
Do it. Okay, Dan.
I inhale so much flour every day. I just think my lungs are coated in flour and powdered sugar.
Yeah. Gluten-filled lungs.
Baker's lung, not smoker's lung.
Yeah, I love that.
Plus 2 kids that are just filled with germs.
Fair.
Anyways, so
Wooshies. I'm what's wooshies?